Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. Before we get to our race preview over at Santa Anita, we want to remind everybody of the New Year's sale happening right now at Daily Racing Form. You can get up to 15% off on all of your favorite Daily Racing Form products when you use that promo code NY2025, and this sale will go all the way through January the 6th. Set out to Santa Anita. We'll take a look at race number 5 for Saturday, January the 4th. David, we have 3-year-olds in here, newly turned 3-year-olds. No Kentucky Derby points on the line, but this is definitely a race that Bob Baffert has used and other trainers have used to get horses ready, because it's a nice sort of stepping stone at 7 furlongs to kind of help horses stretch out to go the longer distances. So small field here, but a couple talented runners in Barnes, who was a very highly regarded horse who went over and broke the maiden at Churchill Downs. And then you have Bullard, who won the Bob Hope last time out and has won the 2 starts out there. So those two, probably the top 2, but 2 of 3 in a small, or 2 of a couple in a small field for Bob Baffert.
Yeah, you might just take a glance at this field and see only 5 runners, or your past performance is only taking up 2/3 of one page. But when you start to pick through these 5 horses, there's really no weak link in this group. They all have shown talent so far, and obviously Barnes and Bullard are going to attract the bulk of the wagering attention. But I won't be surprised when any of these 5 horses end up being nice ones in the future.
McKenzie Street's a little more proven, is multiple grade 1 placed. You have the 2 Bafferts with Barnes and Romanesque right next to each other. And then if you are someone who looks at the workouts, which you can watch on XBTV, some of these horses look a little different in the morning than what they've shown in the afternoon. And so that's always something to take into account, another factor. So small field of 5, but definitely some talent in here. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector. I wasn't surprised to see Barnes projected on the front end, especially because Barnes is coming out of that sprint race last time out. Horse certainly has talent, David, but he seemed a little quirky. Like, he seemed a little green late in the race, and he didn't have the smoothest of beginnings. So in a small field like that, you want to be as efficient as possible, because you make 1 or 2 wrong moves, that could really impact you.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be surprised if some horses maybe are adjusting their running styles a little bit for this race. Mackenzie Street showed a ton of early speed last time, getting involved in a wicked pace. Now getting a jockey change for this race, so I'm not going to be surprised when he is intentionally rated in here. And then the other 2 potential speeds are both from the Bob Baffert stable. And with Barnes being drawn to the inside, kind of hard to see Romanesque going on some send mission to get in front of that horse early. They already got Barnes that experience rating last time.
Let's take a look at the field. We'll start with Mackenzie Street. And you were just pointing out how Mackenzie Street had a pretty tough trip on November the 17th. They had a good start, moved off the rail a little bit, but then gets caught in between horses battling. And there was a line of 3 horses battling across the track. And those 3 end up finishing 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the race that they were in. So the race just did not set up well for those horses that were battling it out early. And it really set the race up nicely for Bullard to the outside, who just came and mowed them on down. So you have Mackenzie Street and Bullard in here, who both come out of that Bob Hope last time out. Bullard certainly wants them to go quick early on. But as you were pointing out, I think we can maybe expect a little different trip for Mackenzie Street.
Yeah, I don't think he's run badly in any of his starts. And as you were just accurately summarizing, I mean, he did not get a good trip last time and actually held on pretty well to be 3rd, because the 2 other horses that were involved in that pace were basically eased across the finish line. And I know it looks like his buyers have been going in the wrong direction. If you look at the Timeform US speed figures that do take pace into account, his last race is his highest Timeform US speed figure yet of 109, and actually the biggest number of anybody in this field. So I know this horse doesn't have the same upside that you can project for others, but I don't want to be totally dismissive of his chances, because he's run pretty well on occasion.
Yeah, you look at the overall body of work too. He has 4 races. The rest of the field combined has 5. So he has a little bit more experience and maybe a little more foundation. And in 2 of his losses, he lost to the horses who ran 1-2 in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So in that resume overall is really not bad. Maybe with a slightly different trip, he could be a horse that offers a little value in here. Barnes, a $3.2 million purchase. The number 2 in here is the next one up. This is a horse who had a lot of buzz as he went over to Churchill Downs, and it was the first start back at Churchill Downs for Bob Baffert after the suspension in quite some time. So you knew that this horse was highly regarded, and then they wanted to get back into the winner's circle. And a lot of the race, he really didn't look like a winner, but I think he got there on kind of class and just sort of pure ability because he had a good start, but then he was down on the inside. He was kind of hard ridden to try to hold that position. He kind of shuffled back a little bit. And then late in the race, he was hanging on the wrong lead and he just got up there. So for a horse who earned a pretty good speed figure and who was going to be a short price in here, visually, it wasn't the most exciting race in the world.
Doesn't it kind of feel like Bob Baffert said to himself, I've got this potential Triple Crown candidate that is training amazing, and I'm going to actually give him a bit of a challenge on debut by shipping him across the country and by putting him in a race that he really probably is not going to handle. I mean, 5.5 furlongs
Yes.
seems like it's short for this horse who has this big rangy stride to him. Looks like a horse that's going to be a classic distance type for Bob down the line. I think it almost worked against him too much. I mean, to the point that he got beat at a very short price. He just barely gets up on the finish line. And you mentioned, the trip that he got, and I think you summarized it well. But this horse should have gotten a good education out of that race.
Yes.
And I would imagine that was the plan all along. And you were alluding to some of the workouts for these horses coming in. Well, you could watch a lot of the workouts for Barnes. Actually, I think the 1-2 back where they went 6 furlongs from the gate in company with Romanesque is the one that you want to pay attention to. Now, Romanesque, I think, was inaccurately given credit for a 6 furlong work. He only worked 5 furlongs and was kind of pulled up at the end of that work. But Barnes did work on right through the wire and pulled away. And that was a pretty impressive drill. He obviously trained well into the first start, has trained well out of it. The only thing that I would quibble a little bit about is the morning line price. I think this horse is going to be the favorite.
Yeah, he seems like a horse who just got the most upside, especially moving forward. I love how you pointed out. It was probably not even what he's going to do best. And he overcame those obstacles and still got the job done. And those workouts in the morning, yeah, he dusted Romanesque in the one, I think it was on December the 22nd, and then came back on December 29th. It was a little strange. It wasn't a bad work, but I actually thought the horse Rodriguez actually may have worked a little bit better or right on even terms with him. And that was the horse that Romanesque defeated in the debut. So you're playing these fun common opponent or common rival games. Who's better in the morning versus the afternoon? Nonetheless, I think Barnes is going to be really, really tough in here. And we've mentioned Romanesque a few times, so we can get to him, David. That debut effort, nothing wrong with it. Was asked from the inside, was in a little bit tight, but worked his way to the lead with 3 others to the outside pressing and then put those horses away, earned an 84 Beyer speed figure. I mean, it's a solid debut. The only problem is he'll have a couple other horses in here who are pretty tough, who have earned better speed figures than him already.
Yeah, I kind of like this first start. I mean, he was not in the most comfortable position early in the race because he wasn't so quick out of the gate where it looked like he had to be in front, but he was ridden by Juan Hernandez to secure that position. And he was kind of, forward, but maybe a half length behind the other leaders down the backstretch, and then, rushed up into that spot into the turn. And he just kind of kept staying on at one pace and put that rival away, kind of almost acting to me like a horse that ultimately is going to want to go even farther than this, even though he's a son of Practical Joke. You might think of as more of a one-turn sire. I just don't get the vibe that he's being cranked up for the big effort that Barnes is coming into this race. I mean, I mentioned that drill with the 2 of them. And then, they both came back with a maintenance work. Bob does kind of give that easier maintenance work sometimes right on top of a race. So I think this horse might have a bit of a future. I just wonder if this is the spot where we're going to see that step forward.
Completely agree. Visually, he looks like a horse who was getting prepped for longer distances and might be better when they keep going a little bit longer. Smooth Cruisin' was a big price when he broke his maiden, and it was a nice effort. He had a slow start. He was 5th, then 4th. He got kind of pushed through the inside and angled around 3 wide and wore down the pace setter that day. We've already seen the 3rd place finisher come back and win a maiden special weight and then win the grade 2 Low Sal Futurity with an 87 Beyer speed figure. So he got the job done against a group that's already come back and flattered this performance. I really don't have very many knocks on this effort. It's just now he'll be stepping up and facing 4 other pretty tough rivals in here.
Yeah, he was a little green this day. I mean, broke about 2 lengths slowly. You saw the upper stretch right there. He was hanging on his left lead for about a 16th of a mile, lugged in behind the 2 leaders. A lot of horses would get discouraged when they put themselves in that position, but he was able to switch on over to his right lead, get outside of those horses, and ran them down at the end. He did get pace to close into, and I think that helped him out a little bit. And I also kind of wonder why he hasn't raced since late October. There's been no break in his workouts. He's kind of been working consistently since, early November right up until now. They just kind of have elected to wait for this race. He's just landing in a really tough spot, but I do think this horse has a bit of a future.
And Bullard rounds out the field. Grade 3 Bob Hope winner last time out. Both of his races have been very impressive. And one that you don't really see with these younger horses too much, he's come from pretty far out of it in back-to-back races. And he got a really nice setup in the Bob Hope. As we were pointing out, McKenzie Street was battling with two other horses, and those three just set it up for off-the-pace rivals. The runner-up in this race, Madacat Road, came back, broke the maiden recently. So the race already come back pretty live, drawn to the outside in here. So a lot of things I think are positive for Bullard, but in a field like this, he doesn't seem to have as much natural speed as some of his main rivals, horse like Barnes, who seems to be pretty quick. We talked about McKenzie Street, who might be able to show multiple dimensions in there. So if you're comparing him to some of the other major players, he might just be behind the 8 ball a little bit in here.
Yeah, I mean, I respect what this horse has done. I mean, as you mentioned, you don't often see horses that are able to race effectively from off the pace like they've done it before, right from the first start of their careers. Like, he really has finished strongly in both of those efforts, but he has also gotten those strong paces to close into both times, especially last time in the Bob Hope. And I can just so easily see this pace not really developing, as I mentioned, with McKenzie Street maybe going back to stalking tactics. And then you've got the two Bob Baffert trainees. How often do we see those horses, go head and head on the front end and try to back down the pace a little bit? So I just wonder if Bullard is going to have as favorable a setup this time, but I do like both of his races, and I think he's going to run well again.
Yeah, no knocks on him. We'll see if he gets the same type of trip he has had in his couple starts that have resulted in victories. Let's move to selections for this one, David. I'm going to go to the more proven Bullard, just thinking that maybe we'll get Barnes, McKenzie Street, Romanesque kind of putting a little pressure on each other, but I could absolutely see this being a race where the top 3 or 4 are just all fine with their positioning, right? They're not battling it out. They're fine sitting first, second, and third, and that is where it might get a little difficult for a horse like Bullard. You're going to lean towards Barnes, the highly regarded Baffert runner.
Yeah, I just feel like this horse showed enough potential on debut that we're likely to see a step forward this time. It kind of feels like he's being prepared for that. And I think he's going to get a pretty good trip in this race. I don't anticipate that they're going to go that quickly up front. And the only negative with him is that I do believe Barnes is going to get bet down significantly from that 8-5 morning line. He's a horse that I think was the lowest individual betting interest in the last Derby Future wager. So he's definitely a horse with a bit of a following.
Not the biggest field in the world, but a couple horses that have some serious talent in here. Whoever you play, however you play them, we wish you the best of luck in the San Vicente on Saturday.